Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, Forever in Memory. In this video, we'll be honoring American celebrities who have passed away today and in recent days, along with other notable figures from around the world. Before we begin, please show your support by giving this video a like. It really helps the channel. Thank you. And let's get started.
Died on September 25th, 2025. Gene Iba, 78, was an American basketball coach whose career stretched from college courts to international arenas, carrying forward a family name synonymous with the game. The grandson of legendary coach Henry Iba, Gene carved his own path as a teacher of fundamentals, discipline, and teamwork. He served as head coach at Houston Baptist University, Baylor University, and later at the University of Tulsa, where he helped restore the program's competitive edge. His longest tenure came at Pittsburgh State University in Kansas, where for nearly 2 decades he guided the Gorillas, building not only winning teams, but also mentoring players who carried his lessons beyond basketball. Known for his emphasis on defense, conditioning, and accountability, Iba created squads that reflected his belief that the game was as much about character as it was about scoring. Beyond the wins and losses, he was respected as a steady, principled presence. Players often recalled how he demanded effort, but also cared deeply about their lives off the court. He embodied the idea that a coach is both strategist and mentor, shaping young athletes into adults ready for the challenges beyond sports. His passing closes a chapter in a coaching lineage that left a deep imprint on American basketball. Gene Iba is remembered as a man who honored tradition while forging his own legacy, a coach who loved the game, respected its roots, and gave countless players the tools to succeed on and off the hardwood.
Died on September 25, 2025. Bobby Grier, 91, was an American football player and trailblazer, remembered for breaking racial barriers in college athletics. In 1956, as a fullback and defensive back for the University of Pittsburgh, he became the first black player to participate in the Sugar Bowl, facing Georgia Tech in New Orleans at a time when segregation still gripped the South. His inclusion in that game was a national flashpoint, sparking political protests in Georgia and beyond. Yet Grier carried himself with dignity, playing under intense scrutiny and symbolizing the slow but irreversible progress of integration in college sports. Though his team lost that day, Grier's presence on the field became far larger than the scoreline. He served in the U.S. Air Force after college and built a quiet life of service and family away from headlines, but his role in sports history remained indelible. For decades, he was invited back to ceremonies and honored as a pioneer whose courage helped open doors for countless athletes who followed. His passing is mourned not only by Pittsburgh fans, but by all who recognize the broader significance of his stand. Bobby Grier is remembered as a man whose name became part of civil rights history, a player who bore the weight of change with quiet strength, and whose legacy reminds us that the simple act of stepping onto a field can sometimes alter the course of a nation. Died on September 25, 2025. Jonathan Lear, 76, was an American philosopher, psychoanalyst, and educator whose work bridged classical thought with contemporary moral questions. A longtime professor at the University of Chicago, he became known for his elegant writings on Aristotle, Freud, ethics, and the fragility of human life, weaving together philosophy and psychoanalysis to explore what it means to live meaningfully. Lear's books, including Love and Its Place in Nature, Open-Minded, Happiness, Death, and the Remainder of Life, and Radical Hope, challenged readers to confront uncertainty and loss with courage. In Radical Hope, his reflection on cultural collapse through the story of the Crow Nation's plenty coups, he offered a vocabulary for thinking about resilience in times of profound change, a work that reached far beyond academia. As a teacher, Lear was admired for clarity and depth, able to make ancient philosophy feel urgent in modern classrooms. As a practicing psychoanalyst, he brought insight from the clinic into his philosophical work, arguing that self-understanding was central to ethical life. He was a frequent lecturer around the world, sought after for his ability to join rigorous scholarship with humane reflection. His passing leaves a void in both philosophy and psychoanalysis. Jonathan Lear is remembered not only for his intellectual achievements, but for the generosity with which he engaged students and colleagues, encouraging them to wrestle seriously with the question that defined his own life's work: how to live well in the face of vulnerability and change.
Died on September 25, 2025. Harold Dennis Dickie Bird, 92, was an English cricket umpire and former player, celebrated as one of the game's most recognizable and respected figures. Born in Barnsley, Yorkshire, he began his sporting life as a footballer before turning to cricket, playing briefly for Yorkshire and Leicestershire. Yet it was as an umpire that he achieved worldwide fame, standing in 66 test matches and over 60 one-day internationals between the 1970s and 1990s. With his flat cap, expressive gestures, and no-nonsense Yorkshire humor, Bird became a beloved presence on cricket grounds from Lord's to Melbourne. He was renowned for his sharp eye, firm but fair decisions, and the trust he commanded from players of every nation. Beyond the boundary, he was admired for his modesty and warmth, never allowing global fame to dilute his Barnsley roots. In retirement, Bird wrote best-selling autobiographies, served as president of Barnsley Cricket Club, and remained a tireless ambassador for the sport. Honors followed, including an MBE and OBE, symbols of the respect he earned both within and beyond cricket. His death marks the passing of a true cricketing institution. Dickie Bird will be remembered not only for the matches he officiated, but for the humanity he brought to them, a man whose integrity, humor, and devotion to the game made him an enduring figure in cricket's history. Died on September 25, 2025. Jerome A. Cohen, 93, was an American legal scholar whose pioneering work introduced the study of Chinese law to the United States and shaped generations of legal and diplomatic understanding between the two countries. A graduate of Yale Law School and a former clerk to Chief Justice Earl Warren, he began his career as a traditional lawyer before his curiosity carried him toward Asia. In the 1960s, when few in the West had access to Chinese legal system, Cohen immersed himself in Mandarin and comparative law, producing groundbreaking research that opened new windows into a closed society. As a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, later at Harvard Law School, and finally at New York University, He trained countless students who went on to become diplomats, jurists, and scholars. His writings, clear, detailed, and deeply informed, set the standard for the field of Chinese legal studies in the West. Outside the academy, he worked as a practicing lawyer and consultant, advising governments, NGOs, and businesses on the complex intersections of law and policy in East Asia. Cohen was admired not only for his intellectual courage, but also for his moral clarity. He spoke out on human rights issues, defended dissidents, and believed that law should serve as a bridge across political divides. His mentorship extended far beyond classrooms, nurturing younger scholars with patience and generosity. His passing marks the end of a remarkable era in U.S.-China legal scholarship. Jerome A. Cohen is remembered as a trailblazer who combined rigorous scholarship with a conscience, a man who insisted that understanding another nation's legal system was not only an academic pursuit, but also an act of diplomacy and humanity.
Died on September 24, 2025. Aron Bielski, 97, was the last surviving member of the Bielski partisans, the Jewish resistance group in Nazi-occupied Belarus that saved more than 1,000 lives during the Holocaust. Born in Stenkevice, he was the youngest of the 4 Bielski brothers, Tuvia, Asael, Zeus, and Aron, who led one of the largest Jewish partisan units in World War II. Though only a teenager during the war, Aron played his part in the forests of Belarus, helping the group build hidden camps, gather food, and protect refugees who streamed to the Bielskis for safety. Unlike many partisan units focused solely on combat, the Bielskis organized a community. They sheltered children, the elderly, and families, ensuring survival as an act of resistance. Aron's presence symbolized both the vulnerability of youth and the determination of his family to preserve life in the face of destruction. After the war, he emigrated, eventually settling in the United States, where he lived under the name Aron Bell. For decades, he lived quietly, but in later years he spoke publicly about his experiences in the forest, reminding audiences that resistance took many forms, and that the courage of ordinary people could defy extermination. His story, along with his brothers, was later immortalized in books, documentaries, and the feature film Defiance. With his passing, a living link to one of the Holocaust's most extraordinary rescue efforts is gone. Aron Bielski is remembered not only as a survivor, but as part of a family whose bravery turned defiance into salvation, leaving behind a legacy of lives saved and a reminder of resilience in humanity's darkest hour. Born on July 23, 1961, in Midland, Texas, Woody Tracy Harrelson grew up in a childhood marked by both ordinary rhythms and extraordinary shadows. His mother, Diane, worked as a secretary and carried much of the responsibility for raising Woody and his 2 brothers after their parents separated. His father, Charles Harrelson, was largely absent and later infamous for a criminal life that cast a long, complicated shadow over Woody's upbringing. Despite these challenges, he developed an early resilience, a sharp wit, and a natural sense of humor that would later become central to his identity. The family moved to Lebanon, Ohio, where Woody spent most of his youth. In school, he wasn't the obvious star. Teachers described him as restless and often distracted, but he found outlets in sports, mischief, and a budding interest in performance. He discovered a gift for mimicry and storytelling, the ability to make classmates laugh or pull them into his orbit with a quick joke. What began as a way to mask insecurities slowly evolved into the contours of a craft. His teenage years were turbulent, marked by searching and uncertainty. Jobs as a teenager, from working at a local amusement park to small manual labor gigs, showed him both the grind of everyday life and his hunger for something more. Books, music, and the occasional stage performance began to open doors in his imagination. By the time he graduated high school, Harrelson sensed that his restless energy would not be satisfied by a conventional path. He had yet to fully name it, but the stage was calling, and the young man from Ohio was ready to test whether his charm and raw magnetism could be shaped into something lasting.
In his college years, Woody Harrelson began to channel the restless energy that had carried him through adolescence into something more focused. He enrolled at Hanover College in Indiana, initially uncertain of where life would take him, but soon gravitated toward the theater department. On stage, he found both a discipline and a freedom that he had never fully experienced before. Memorizing lines, studying characters, and learning to harness his natural charisma into performances that drew genuine emotion from audiences. Acting classes gave him structure, but it was his appetite for risk and spontaneity that set him apart. Those years were formative not only artistically, but personally. Harrelson wrestled with questions of faith, politics, and identity, sharpening the sense of independence that would later mark both his career and his activism. Friends from Hanover remembered him as exuberant, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. Someone who could steal a scene in rehearsal and then talk deep into the night about philosophy, comedy, or life's absurdities. After graduating in 1983 with a degree in theater and English, Harrelson made the decisive move to New York City, where he threw himself into auditions with the same determination that had driven him in school. He worked odd jobs to stay afloat, including stints as a bartender and a theater usher, while chasing every chance to prove himself on stage. The competition was fierce, but his mixture of raw talent and disarming charm began to attract attention. His persistence paid off when he landed guest roles on television and small parts in theater, slowly building a resume. The true turning point came in 1985, when he was cast as the good-natured but dim-witted bartender Woody Boyd on the hit sitcom Cheers. What was originally meant to be a short-term replacement role quickly transformed into a defining chapter of his life. Harrelson's easy warmth and comic timing won over audiences instantly, and he became a fan favorite, earning both critical recognition and the kind of visibility that can change a young actor's career overnight. By the end of the 1980s, Woody Harrelson had gone from an uncertain student in Indiana to one of television's most recognizable faces. The role gave him stability, fame, and the credibility to dream bigger, a platform from which he could leap into film and more challenging creative territory. With the success of Cheers securing his place in Hollywood, Woody Harrelson stepped into the 1990s ready to reinvent himself beyond the lovable sitcom bartender. His breakout film moment came with White Men Can't Jump, 1992, where his streetwise banter and chemistry with Wesley Snipes showed he could anchor a film and connect with audiences on a larger stage. Soon after, he stunned critics with his turn in Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers, 1994, embracing darkness and satire in a performance that proved his range extended far beyond comedy. Throughout the decade, Harrelson moved fluidly between genres. He earned an Academy Award nomination for his portrayal of hustler publisher Larry Flynt in The People vs. Larry Flynt, 1996, a role that cemented him as a serious dramatic actor. He took risks with independent projects, balanced them with mainstream comedies, and built a reputation as one of Hollywood's most unpredictable yet reliable performers. His choices showed a pattern. He was drawn to characters who lived on the margins, flawed, eccentric, sometimes destructive, yet always profoundly human. The 2000s and 2010s only deepened that reputation. He became a scene stealer in blockbusters like Zombieland in 2009 and in franchises such as The Hunger Games, where his portrayal of the jaded mentor Hamish Abernathy became iconic. He earned further Oscar nominations for The Messenger in 2009 and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri in 2017, displaying the emotional depth and gravity that had grown out of his stage roots. Harrelson could slip seamlessly from biting satire to heartbreaking sincerity, and audiences came to expect the unexpected from him. Off-screen, his life reflected the same mix of intensity and conviction. He became an outspoken advocate for environmental causes, veganism, and alternative lifestyles, living with a sense of purpose that mirrored the rebellious spirit of many of his characters. At the same time, he remained grounded by family, friendships, and a belief in creativity as both work and play. Today, Woody Harrelson stands as one of America's most distinctive actors, a performer who moved from small-town Ohio to the biggest stages in Hollywood without ever losing his instinct for risk. His legacy is defined not just by awards or box office numbers, but by a career of fearless choices, the ability to surprise, and a presence that makes every role, whether comic, tragic, or somewhere in between, indelibly his own.